bad times. So when you've gleaned all you can from the services of the state, and you've asked employees to take days of work without pay,
yes,
you know, there's got to be somewhere to get money. And unfortunately, it's a bad time to raise taxes on anybody, but I don't think there's any alternative.
Now, in terms of what the proposal that's being met and now is being argued against, I mean, they're not adding great tax burdens on the lower classes.
No, and in fact, they're exempting the first $2,400 on unemployment for
yes.
the filing of 09. That's part of these 66 and 67.
Yeah.
So that means that those that are distraught will get a little relief, you know, and they're in a lot of pain. There are a lot of laid off workers today. In fact, the Association of Western Pulp and Paper Workers lost another 270 workers in Albany. And so for the industrial worker, or I should say what's left of the industrial worker in Oregon, it's been very painful for a very, very long time.
Okay, so one of the things that we have to bear in mind here as citizens is that we have a responsibility for one another in terms of education, in terms of health services, in terms of opportunities for people to get back to work. Now, tell me in terms of your experience, I know here in the pulp and paper work, you just mentioned one of the plants that's now really being closed down in a sense.
It is going to be permanently shut down.
What's going on here?
Well, this is the 10th anniversary of the WTO. And
the World Trade Organization.
World Trade Organization, which basically did away with tariffs and environmental concerns for international trade. This opened up the floodgate for China to come in and be a trading partner, but they don't have to maintain the safety and health, environmental standards, pay the wages or the pension plans that we are accustomed to in this country. We virtually cannot compete. I liken it to the industrial sector today are like the redcoats during our own revolution, while the Chinese are hiding behind trees and rocks, if you will, shooting at us with our red coats on. There is nowhere for the industrial worker to hide anymore. And, you know, like when I was a kid, you could virtually go to any steel mill on the south side of Chicago and get a job. I wonder today in our society where young people go to get a job to pay for college education. And in fact, I work with a lobbyist in the Capitol who works for another organization who works summers in a pulp and paper plant that paid all his tuition for 4 years. Where are these opportunities for young people today?
Yeah. If we close down factories, if we close down operations, you see, what do we do in terms of the opportunity for people to move ahead as citizens? You know, one of the things that I grew up in the Depression, and I worked from the time I was, about 9 years old in a grocery store, and then later in a clothing store, and then later, and I also set pins in a bowling alley, etc. At the age of 16, I was working in a defense plant from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight, you see, on a drill press on tank steering mechanisms. But I had work.
Right.
Made all the difference in the world. Now, you're involved with the labor movement, and it's terribly important for us to have work for our people to perform.
Well, yes. I mean, I think here in McMinnville, as an example, coming in from the north, you see this horribly big blue building. I call it the Blue Ox. That's Cascade Steel. People don't identify with the people that work inside there. But if the people inside there don't work in that plant, what do you think happens to the tax base of the community of McMinnville? What happens if newsprint, the pulp and paper plant in Newburgh, shuts down? How does this affect the tax base of Newburgh? It's a viable tax entity, and payroll taxes and property taxes and the little bit of income tax and things that the corporations pay.
And what's the problem with corporations paying $10 a year?
It's not enough.
See, I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, I had the great privilege of sitting in on an employer lobbyist group, and they said that the only thing that they were willing to do was to pay the corporate minimum tax as it accelerated with the cost of living since 1931. I mean, that's ludicrous. I return you back to the combination fishing and hunting license. Most citizens who fish and hunt pay more than corporations do in the minimum tax they pay to operate here in Oregon.
Would you say that once again?
Basically, you pay more for a combination fishing and hunting license here in Oregon than most corporations pay in the minimum tax to do business in the state, which is $10.
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense at all.
No, it does not.
Well, we ought to be taxed on our capacity to pay.
Absolutely.
See, that's one of the things that I've never objected to the state or the federal income tax. You know, a tax based on your income is the fairest tax of all.
We couldn't agree more on that one.
Put her there.
Yeah,
now,
definitely.
I've got some other questions here for you.
Sure.
This one of the things that I've looked at here is you're interested in green jobs, but what do you mean by green jobs?
What I mean by green jobs are green jobs for me are jobs that pay good wages, family wages, benefits, a defined pension plan, and they recycle. And I'd look to two companies again that do that. That's Cascade Steel and Newsprint and Newberg. If you don't, they recycle, and the green they come out with is the dollars they pay their employees. You can't ask for a greener job than that. The problem with what a lot of the environmental movement's bringing on in the quest of green jobs don't meet that criteria. They're low wages, they usually don't pay benefits, there is no pension plan, so there is no green in your pocket. I want the four-part green job. Of
green jobs. Now, you know, as a matter of fact, you're mentioning recycling. That's exactly what Cascade Steel does, isn't it?
Absolutely. What would go to the landfill now goes into the production of steel. And let me digress back 20-some years ago when a fellow steelworker and myself, Dave West, lobbied, as rank and filers from the union, from our union, on behalf of Cascade Steel, because some environmental movement wanted Cascade Steel to be responsible for all the items within a vehicle when they recycled it, rather than the producer of the car at the point. So we argued that this would eliminate our jobs. It's unfair when the company here is recycling the aftermath of what it was a viable vehicle at one time, and now you're putting all the problem on Cascade Steel. It wasn't fair, and the bill never made it out. We actually got a great deal of applause from Cascade Steel for our efforts.
Well, you know, that's one of the things that I have thought in terms of waste. You know, what the garbage man picks up. Terribly important that we recycle what is recyclable in that waste. And that's one of the things I've thought about in terms of the generating of electricity. We have here a wonderful Mac Water and Light, which has very reasonable rates for our power. And we were making our own power, actually with boilers that were using coal until the Depression, and when we began to get power from Bonneville Dam, and then we could use that power, which was federal power, at the lowest cost, and they asked us to close down our recycling, as it were, boilers, and get our power from Bonneville. But that made possible the development of industry in this community.
Well, to your point about recycling, here's another craw for the pulp and paper workers in newsprint up in Newberg and other pulp and paper plants with the commingling of recyclables. Now it just isn't paper and wood fibers that they get to the plant, but they get plastic, tin cans, and so now when it comes on site, they have to unmingle this scrap. It's costly, it's time consuming, and it isn't the idea of recycling the way it should be. I think the citizens should have an obligation to put their tin cans in one, paper in another, plastic in the other. I don't think that's up to companies or workers to have to re-pick out. That's not the idea of recycling, to my opinion.
Well, as a matter of fact, we do some of that now with our two different kinds of bins, and I really appreciate that here in McMinnville, that we have a chance to at least start the recycling process